Welcome back to Big Data and a lot of beer drinking today with John Gray. It's actually Big Data and Brews. So John, can you introduce yourself and the brew you brought with you?
Yes, Jonathan Gray, CEO and founder of Continuuity. And today I've brought a local selection. Yes, San Francisco's finest, Anchor Steam. I always like to enjoy a local brew.
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
So I brought us some nice local
But hey,
fare
it's
to
not
enjoy.
a Pilsner.
It's not a Pilsner. No, we're not in Germany.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I trained before I can get a couple of those down. Actually, I thought
A little too much flavor for you?
Yeah, we trained together, right? A few times.
Yeah. Yeah, we have.
Okay.
A few times.
So, John, tell me about what are you guys doing?
Cheers. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so Continuuity is a big data startup, as you might have noticed. And what we're really focused on is the developer. Hadoop is this great infrastructure platform, all kinds of good stuff, but it's super low level, right? It's very hard to program against. And a lot of what we're focused on is what we see as the next generation in Hadoop, which is less about the data warehousing, and it's more about applications.
Okay.
So more real-time, more closed loop, and it's more about a developer able to actually build a product, a service, something on top of data, right? Rather than mostly using it for business intelligence.
So you're kind of a Hibernate for Hadoop, or?
That's one way to look at it. You know, we really kind of go back to the app server.
Okay.
Right? So Hibernate might be one piece of it, but if you look at, JBoss or WebLogic.
I've worked at JBoss.
There you go. So you get the app server thing, right? The JVM came around, good platform, pretty low level, right? And when you want to build an application, there's a bunch of stuff, a bunch of boilerplate things you have to do and build on top of the JVM to just enable your application.
So what kind of services you're providing then in your platform?
Right. So essentially, the way to think about our platform is a programming framework. So we have a new set of Java programming abstractions.
Okay.
And then we have a scale-out runtime based on top of Yarn and HBase.
Okay. You like Yarn?
We like Yarn a lot.
Yeah.
So we've committed a lot of stuff to Yarn. We have an open source project actually called Weave that we've open sourced, and Weave is a framework for building Yarn applications.
Okay.
Because if you ever play with Yarn, very, very difficult to use.
It's really big surprise.
The funny thing is, I spent all this time talking about how hard Hadoop is.
Yeah.
It's getting harder.
Yeah.
Right? Yarn makes Hadoop harder than it used to be because, it kind of has broadened what Hadoop can be.
Yeah.
But at the same time does much less for you.
So it's maybe like Zookeeper client, the thing that I wrote 20 years ago. Or why are you laughing?
I'm just remembering.
Yeah, back then,
Yeah.
when we had no gray hair. So what is it doing?
Yeah. So basically, what we do is try to give the developer, capabilities, right? So HDFS stores raw files, right? And Kafka allows you to do a message bus, right? A queuing system, right? But if what I want as a developer is, let's say I have a website and I want to put tracking pixels on it, and I want to, ingest all my user events. To do the reliable, highly available scale-out ingestion requires some protocol on some system to do the collection. It requires a bunch of logic on top of HDFS to write it.
Yeah.
And then it requires a system around it to manage it and monitor it.
Yeah.
And what you do in our system is you create something called a stream. You create the stream and you automatically have all that stuff for you.
Okay.
Right? You have a highly available endpoint. You hit it with REST. You can hit it with Scribe and Flume and Kafka. All different kinds of protocols will reliably write that down for you. And then we make it available for you to process in real time or in batch.
Yeah.
So we have a real-time stream processing engine. So you can do a lot of different real-time stuff. And then over the same data sets in the same cluster, also run MapReduce jobs.
Cool. And are you hosting this, or is it an application that I install in my data center?
Good question. So it's both. And this has been one of the big questions of our company, right? And I think it's a big question for a lot of companies. Is cloud or on-prem. Small company, big company, top down, bottom up, whatever. And our approach is both. Yeah. Because what we really focus on is, I say the new application server is a PaaS, right? The next generation of the app server is in the form of a PaaS. Yeah. And
but maybe not all companies are there yet.
No.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about a PaaS is, if I'm a large financial institution, I have thousands of developers. Tens of thousands of developers sometimes. And what I'm looking for is on-prem, but it's still a PaaS. Yeah. Right? what people want in the cloud is a cloud-based PaaS.
Yeah.
Right? And the main difference is who manages it. In the cloud, we manage it, Continuuity. And if it's on-prem, the customer manages the cluster themselves, right? So in the end, it's the same product, right? It's a PaaS level. Our end user is always the developer.
Yeah.
The deployment model is very, very different. The business model is different. And so the important thing in a startup, as I'm sure you know, is focus.
Is that true? Yeah.
It's usually an important component, right? And I think you guys did well to really focus stuff early on, right? And really say, like, this is what we're doing, right? Spreadsheet for big data, spreadsheet for Hadoop or whatever. And if you can hang your hat on one thing, then people will know what you are.
Yeah. And
so you have to have some focus and know what you're going after. And so what we've done is, cloud is really a test dev thing for us today.
Okay.
So we don't have customers in the cloud. And
we don't either.
All of our production stuff is on-prem.
Yeah, cool.
And I think, the thing that we learned, which was really, really interesting, is we knew banks would be on-prem, we knew telcos would be on-prem, right? Healthcare and all that kind of stuff. What's interesting is the big internet companies, not like the Facebooks of the world, but like ad tech companies and gaming companies and just content companies. If they reach scale, they come on-prem.
Yeah, it's more cost efficient.
There's just the economics make no sense in the cloud at scale. And not just that, but the technical limitations of it, right? Like, what we see is people building out 20, 30, 40, 50 terabytes per node. Right. And how are you going to get 40 terabytes of local storage in a 2U server running in the cloud? Yeah,
we keep joking here, the fastest way to send data to the cloud is UPS and a hard drive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not a joke.
Yeah.
And Amazon has that service, right? Amazon actually allows you to sell that, to do that thing. And actually, we've done that with a customer. Yeah. Where we had a test dev. A lot of what we do early on in POCs and things, just to reduce friction, is we'll stand up something in the cloud. Right. It's very, very easy for that. Well, we had this test data set that we needed to get. Yeah. And they started to upload it. And
you just
we're
said,
like,
oh, here's a UP.
Yeah, we'll send this ground mail and we'll be there faster than that. Yeah. So when you're dealing with big data, sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense to go into the cloud. One
thing that we do, we had the same problem. People want to try our product. They don't like the cloud too much sometimes. What we did is we built Hadoop clusters in suitcases. We bought those military boxes that you can drop out of the airplane, all the stuff's on springs and what have you. And we put in, 5, 6, 7, 8 U's, and then we ship it to the customer, and they usually just put power network in.
Is this what you call your ghetto appliance?
Oh, that's a ghetto appliance, yeah. Actually, when we started the company, 7 months in, actually, I personally built the first couple, and then literally one fell from the truck. Anyhow, so
did it survive?
It did not. So I had to rebuild it from scratch overnight from like parts because you can't. Anyhow.
Ouch.
Yeah. So what's the piece of technology that you're really proud of in your product? Where's really the hard stuff that you guys solving? And I mean, you have a really cool UI that's really simple. I'm a big fan of that.
Honestly, the thing I'm most proud of is our API.
Yeah, okay.
You're
a real software developer.
Yeah.
Let's drink on that.
Cheers. Software development CEOs.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, if you're really proud of your API, then that's
I'll tell you why I'm proud, right? So it's we're a platform company.
Yeah.
Right. We build. My team is systems engineers.
Yeah.
Not application engineers, right? So we're not exactly our target developer. Yeah. And one of the things that we do as a practice is we have a hackathon every month, an internal hackathon. And for us, we call it the app hackathon.
Yeah, we call it Geek Out.
Nice.
Yeah.
But we have one rule in our hackathons.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to work on a platform.
Okay.
So our hackathons are our opportunity to dog food our product, right? We're all developers. We build a developer product. We want to dog food it, right? So all anyone's allowed to do is build apps.
Yeah.
We had one last weekend. I participated.
Yeah.
I built an app.
Yeah.
So I'm so coding.
Wait until you're bigger, then you only spreadsheets and PowerPoints.
Yeah, I'm mostly PowerPoints and spreadsheets these days, but I at least try to go to the hackathon.
Yeah, that's good.
And but to me, the testament to the API was I didn't have to look at the docs.
Yeah, very nice.
I could just write it. I didn't have to look at the example. No. It just flowed, and I was, I went over and gave one of my guys a pat on the back. I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. I think the there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Java with APIs. With
totally.
ASM and doing trickery and stuff around annotations and injection and
bytecode manipulation.
Bytecode manipulation. You can do some magic
class loading
with APIs. So, so I'm really, really proud of that. You know, from an individual piece of tech we built, we built a stream processing engine. So we call it BigFlow.
Okay.
It's similar to Storm in some ways, but very, very different in other ways.
So help us to understand that, because there's a lot of hype around Storm right now. So why did you go that route? I made similar experience to other, similar scenarios in my company where we decided, we will not use this framework, but we rebuild it for us and we control it. But why did you guys do that?
Good question. I mean, when we first started the company, it was actually like a Storm on HBase platform. And once we did that, we realized, Storm was not the right set of semantics. So Storm is more like a traditional complex event processing CEP system. It's in memory. Right. It's really oriented around low latency. And so it's not durable or transactional. It has no persistent store. Right. So in essence, Storm is an island of technology. You put reliable queuing on one
and it runs on Mesos, right?
It can run on Mesos. They've put it on Yarn too.
Okay.
Right. But that's, you can run it in the same cluster, but it has no integration to HDFS. It has no integration with HBase. Part of the problem is if what you're building is something that actually does persistence, right? You're actually writing down to your data store. So for example, I want to update a user model.
Very likely, right?
So that's what we found. Is once we started to build the apps, was, hey, we're always trying to increment a counter, or we're trying to read a model and update it and write it back down, or we're doing all this persistent stuff, and Storm gave us no way to do that in an easy way. And part of the problem with Storm is at least once execution. Which means I can have all my data replayed. Right. And so if what I'm doing is incrementing a counter, right, a non-idempotent operation, now I have to either deal with approximates, or build a whole bunch of logic in my application to deal with all that kind of stuff, right? And so it just really litters your app with infrastructure and the semantics of the infrastructure, right? I mean, one of the things is I think Storm is more along the lines of eventual consistency, approximations, directional correctness, and things like that. And to me, developers don't think like that.
No,
They think in a very procedural way.
They
think in a consistent way. When I write something down, I expect it to be there, right? And so we took a different approach and said, how does a developer want to write their app? And what kind of semantics do you need around it? And so we built this new thing. We've been very, very focused on the API and making it simple. And then creating tight integration with HBase.
Did you write it all in Java?
This is all in Java today.
Yeah, because, like Storm, Spark, big non-Java fans.
Well, they're JVM.
Yeah, hey. It's, I guess, a positive direction.
It's a positive because.
But I mean, we had other people here that are a big fan. Eric Nachbar's a big fan of Scala. So,
not a big fan, not a hater.
It's
not something that we really spend a lot of time doing. Anytime I've picked up something like Storm or something else that's been in Scala, it's been created problems for me. It's never been easy for me.
I made the same experience. Cheers on that.
Cheers.
So I want to ask
one of the reasons I like it though is we can support it on our platform because
it's
JVM. It can speak to the Java API.
So you have different APIs then? I mean, for Scala, for Java, for Python, for.
So not yet.
Okay.
So today, we really it's an interesting thing. We focus on or not focus, but we kind of define what we call the developer spectrum. And if you put, I call them script kiddies, cut and paste HTML, CSS script kiddies on one end.
Okay, I have to make notes. What script kiddies? Yeah. Okay.
And then on the other hand, you have like real-time distributed system, operating system, hardcore engineers.
We used to call script kiddies the guys that hacked with basically the standard scripts. Do you mean those kind of kids?
Yes.
And now
a script kiddie might consider themselves to be like a software developer and engineer, but actually they have no idea how it works, right? They're copying and pasting, or they're taking someone else's work and just applying it, right?
I guess Hadoop is a great denial of service attack platform.
It is a good denial.
Okay, let's not talk about this. So I want to
kind of the thing about Hadoop is the people within the organization constantly do denial of service attacks on their own clusters.
Yeah, we found this with some customers where they gave us a call and said, our Oracle database is down, your software is really a problem. And we thought, yeah, you had a 200 node Hadoop cluster pulling on your single node Oracle. Oops. Let me switch topics here. I want to ask you about something I know you use, and I wonder if you love or hate or something in between. Let's talk about Gradle. So what is Gradle? How are you guys using that? And
we love and hate it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay. So that most people. Gradle's pretty sophisticated. So maybe can you explain what Gradle is?
I mean, it's a build system, right? It's built in Groovy.
Yeah. Backend is Java. I mean, that's what Hans would say,
it's
right?
Java, yes.
But anyhow, yeah.
And
there's some domain-specific language.
There's the DSL. It's interesting because it's different from Ant and different from Maven.
Yeah.
Right? Which is really all you're looking at in Java today. It's the problem with Maven is it has its way and you can't break from its way. So it's very cool because it's good because it enforces the right behavior. But when you want to do non-standard stuff, you're just hacking around it, or you're just integrating with Ant.
Right.
And I never liked this Ant Maven thing. It just creates a lot of complexity. You can do the pure Ant thing. To me, it just feels like going back in time. And we wanted to try and say, what's next and where are developers going to be, right? As a developer company, we want to try to be on the cutting edge of what other developers are doing. Yeah. And we saw a lot with Gradle. What's cool about Gradle is it's super flexible. Yeah. You can do anything you want. It's programmatic. It handles a bunch of the stuff for you that were hard to do in Maven. They were hard to do in Ant.
Maven just has assumptions and that's it, right? What's the model? Like the Ruby on Rails model. It just assumes that this is how you have to do that. Yes. There's a word for that. I forgot. But then you can override everything, right? It is like
with Maven?
No, not with Maven.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously not. Yeah. I mean, we both went to the biggest nightmares of our development.
You can write your own custom profiles, and then you can write your own custom
and then you have
plugins.
And then have to get it into the repository. And good luck. Oh my god!
So you guys use Gradle?
All this gray here is from Maven. Do you know that Gradle has a big data history?
Is that right?
Yeah. So here's a funny story about Gradle. I worked for a company called Krugel, Ken Krugler, who's now running Scale Unlimited and a good friend, and is doing Bixo.
The Scale Unlimited spirit lives on?
Yeah, of course. No, they're very successful. And again, they do Bixo. And when I worked for Ken's, I guess two Ken startups before, a company called Krugel, we did a code search engine. And I came there and they had Ain't and other issues. And, I talked Ken into using Maven. What at this time, this 2005, 2006, totally made sense. Cutting edge technology, but it ended up.
Maven 1.
Yeah. So this is again. I tell you, all gray hair on this side. It's just Maven. So anyhow, and I worked there with my team for a year, and then we brought in Hans because I know Hans back from the JBoss days. And Hans took on the whole Maven thing, and this is where Hans Doctor, the founder of Gradleware and original architect of Gradle, that's where he said, this is so fucked up, effed up. I built my own build system. So we basically built it back then a nudge distributed code processing search engine for Krugel, and we had to use Maven, and it was really terrible. And Hans said, let me do that better, and that's Gradle.
There you go.
It's a small community. So Gradle is big data, kind of.
And you're still on Maven now, though?
We're actually using Ain't.
Okay, you went backwards.
Yeah, we went backwards. And similar, maybe as why you using Java. So when we started the company, we're now 4 years old. We looked at Gradle very hard. And we have some stuff we do with Gradle, but it's not our core product. And, the challenge, it was just too early. 4 years ago, Gradle wasn't there where it is today, I have to say.
It's still early in Gradle.
It is, and what was really hard for us is exactly the Grails and the Groovy kind of language.
Yeah.
I'm just a big fan of typed languages, as are my engineers, I guess.
But don't you end up doing everything in like shell scripts when you do Ant? How's your type system in Bash?
So that's a good point, right? But in Ant, at least, you're kind of writing a script there, but it's not really trying to be a programming language. As with with the really cool thing about Gradle is, boy, it's just a programming language right there. You do a for loop, boom, you have it right there. It's not like load a plugin, let me do an auto XML, blah blah. Anyhow, so we really wanted to get to the market very quickly. So we looked into Groovy, we looked into Scala, we looked into all that cutting edge stuff, and we said, you know what? We're writing Spring applications since 5 years with Hibernate and with Aint, and we don't have the time to try something out. We want to build an enterprise product.
Yep.
And we take the stuff that's just hanging there and is really solid. And that's what we went up with. We ended up, to be honest, writing a whole lot of Aint plugins ourselves. And we have a really cool, and it's on GitHub, by the way, check it out, a really cool AWS provisioning plugin with Aint, where we can start up Hadoop cluster, shutting them down. That's how we do our continuous integration.
Nice.
Anyhow, that's just as a quick story. What's the most fun big data conference story you want to share?
I know that you have one. I know you have one.
No, but I'll let you. So, I mean,
about you?
I can ask him to cut it out. Yeah.
Oh, big data conference story.
Let me rephrase this. So you're working in the community since quite a while. We didn't really talk about this. So you one of the very early HBase guys. So I mean, boy, this thing took off, right? So reflect a little bit on how the community grew, all the events we had together, and what's the most fun?
It's been crazy.
Yeah,
it's been very crazy.
Did you think?
And as I was reflecting, I wanted to thank you for giving me some of my first gigs, if you recall.
I do. Yeah.
I'll always forget this phone call I had with you before I really knew you very well.
Okay.
And we were it was like getting a training curriculum around HBase for Cloudera, I believe we were building it, and the quantifying guys,
right, and
doing some consulting gigs there, and
you should pay me commission.
Yeah.
No,
good luck collecting that. And Carrier IQ maybe. Yeah.
Man, I had my fingers and all that.
You had your fingers all over the place back then, and that was when I was making my kind of transition, right? Because when I got into all of this Hadoop and HBase stuff, it was in a startup, a consumer startup. Streaming.
Right. So tell me, I really was a big fan of Streamy. So tell me a little bit about that story. So
then
let's
I have
switch
an
from
interesting thing. We're bringing Streamy back.
Oh, that's nice. As an app. Oh, that makes so much sense.
It's the ultimate dog food, right?
Right. So tell us a little bit about this. So more from your entrepreneurial history and those kind of fun days. Tell us a little bit about Streamy, and then how did you move to Facebook, came here, and salt in some of the fun stories we talked about.
Yeah. I mean, so Streamy was an idea we started in college with my buddy, and we moved out to California from Pittsburgh and just started building it. I was a big database guy, but didn't know anything except the relational database and the B tree and all that good stuff. And we built the whole thing on Postgres. And then all the usual problems, right? More data we had, the slower it got. We're an RSS crawling thing, right? So we had all this RSS crawling side of it.
So to maybe
it was like a real-time RSS reader.
Okay.
Right. So we ingested
really cool sharing features and all
a lot of real-time sharing stuff, all kinds of discovery. Right. We were doing natural language processing and machine learning, all this stuff, and there's a lot of crawling too. Right. Yeah. And Postgres was not handling it.
Yeah.
Right. And we also had like a $50,000 database server. And our very limited funds.
You paid this all with your 3 credit cards, I heard, yeah? Or 4?
Until I got the consulting gigs from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. It was a rough time towards the end there. But, what happened was Postgres was just running dry, and we just couldn't get anything out of it. I was actually interviewing somebody, this grad student from USC, and this was back in LA. And he's like, hey, have you heard about this Hadoop thing? I had never heard of it. This is in 2007.
Yeah.
Had not heard of it. Man. Didn't know what it was.
I'm here since 10 years. Then no, I'm kidding.
I'm not really an old timer. You're an old timer, but in more ways than one.
But it's about the mileage, not about the time.
There you go. But I learned about it. HBase had just kind of started around then, and I was like, wow. We could actually do all of the different things that we're doing on here, right? Like this is good for storing our raw data. This is good for MapReduce is good for doing our crawling pipelines. HBase is great for doing our analytics and for actually storing user data and serving it out.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is like an OLAP OLTP thing where you can mix these different workloads, and it's data structure storage.
Yeah.
Right? The thing I always had about Postgres was like this query planner.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to circumvent, always trying to get around this magic black box.
Right.
There isn't a black box in Hadoop and HBase, right?
Yeah.
Which is maybe part of the challenge of it.
Well, but, a big mess. No black box, but a big mess.
No black box, but a big mess. And, at the time, HBase was not ready for that, right? And so I got a lot into the development of HBase itself and really trying to make it more real time. Right,
yeah.
So we rewrote the read pipeline, the write pipeline,
really
optimizing it for low latency and things like that.
And one of the really cool things, if I remember correctly, was that lazy object loading. Help me, where was a big performance factor in HBase? Where I think you had proxy objects and you only read them as you really access the object or something like this?
Yes, I think I know what you're talking about. So
I hope so. You wrote it, right? If I'm, I think
so. There's a couple things that we did. Like one was the early stuff we did was every single cell was its own object.
Right.
And yes, you would do several transformations of this object
before you
actually spit it out.
Yeah.
Right? Because what HBase doesn't have a query planner, but it does have predicate pushdowns.
Yeah.
And it does have selection of columns and all different kinds of some things you do need to run. And yes, there used to be like 3 transformations in HBase before you got the thing back out, right?
Yeah.
And part of that was we rebuilt everything on top of these just binary data.
Yeah.
Everything switched to being a byte array.
Yeah.
Everything got, instead of turning it into an object, right? You just do byte comparisons within the same big blob, right?
Incredibly fast
and
compared to initializing a string and then trying to do a hash on it. Yeah.
And in HBase, every value of everything is its own cell. And so if you're doing an object per cell and you're doing multiple transformations of that object, multiple creations, you create all of this churn in the memory and
and the garbage collector
of CPU and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I forget all the numbers, but it was like 100x performance gains out of all that stuff.
Yeah.
There was a lot of quick wins because it was built by PowerSet to store crawling data.
Yeah.
And not to serve data to a website.
Exactly.
And that's where we tried to get it, right? And I think it's still getting there, right? And that company had its challenges. We had a really hard time raising money in 2008.
Yeah.
And that's when we started to talk a little bit.
Yeah.
In 2008, I think. And I started to do Hadoop consulting.
Really
to fund the company as we were kind of trying to figure out a way to make money and all this kind of stuff. And
then the Big Blue company came
and
along.
Then the Big Blue company came and made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I didn't want to move no matter what.
Yeah.
They let me commute, and the real reason
on an airplane.
Yeah,
yes. That's so LA.
But really, what it was about was taking HBase to the next level.
Yeah.
They had the talent and the problems.
Right.
Right. And once I found out that they had the appetite, I went. Right. Yeah. And so it was when they made the decision to use HBase for Facebook messages. As soon as that decision was made, I was like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things HBase was missing was like that big sponsor.
Right.
With that big meaty use case.
Right.
And now Facebook messages is like 4 nines of reliability.
Yeah.
And tens of petabytes online 24/7. Every instant message you send on Facebook stored and indexed and served out of HBase. So a great use case, pure OLTP, right? Which is kind of way on the other side of the spectrum from Hadoop normally.
Yeah.
And I think...
So how big is their HBase cluster?
The number of nodes?
Yeah.
I don't know the number of nodes offhand.
Just gigantic.
But there's a lot of different things that Facebook does to get around a lot of different limitations of Hadoop, right? Yeah. We talked about distributed denial of service attacks. Facebook has silver, gold, and platinum clusters.
Yeah, we see a lot with our customers.
And in HBase, it was 100 node HBase clusters.
Right.
It wasn't like a big 1,000 node HBase cluster. Right, it's 10 100 node clusters.
Right. Exactly.
Just to reduce problems and all that kind of stuff.
Right. I mean, distribute risk. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. And then why would you leave such a wonderful company that every software developer wants to work for and build your own thing and now even turn into CEO, don't write code anymore? Why the hell would you do that?
I like to solve problems.
And
as a software
building
engineer,
companies just a little bit more complex than software.
It's a much bigger problem, right? And I think part of the thing is from the very start of when I started to use Hadoop and HBase, right? When I picked up the tech, it was about using it. It wasn't about developing it.
Right.
And I still think that's a problem.
Yeah.
I still think same problem exists today that existed back then, which was I want to use the power of the technology to solve my problem.
Yeah.
But there's a huge gap, right? And I think companies like yours are solving that same gap for a different set of users.
Thank you.
Right? But a different set of users, right? And a different kind of problem set. I think the developer has been woefully underserved around Hadoop.
Yeah.
Because it's assumed that a developer can grok it. But the reality is, I mean,
you're not really
a distributed
productive.
system.
Yeah, it's not really, you're not really productive on it. Yeah.
You're not. And if, I think one of the things that I found, and I found this a lot at Facebook, was the way that you do become effective on top of it is with middleware.
Yeah.
You have to write something that disintermediates the raw APIs of the system, which are super low level, from however it is you want to interact with it, right? And so defining those APIs, and then you can implement them on Hadoop, but then you use them in your applications, right? And instead of every company going through the same process,
right, of course,
and taking 12 to 18 months to learn Hadoop, cut their finger on it, understand how you do it, and then build their own middleware. If we can come up with the middleware out of the gate and just say, you know what, start up here, don't understand the mechanics of Hadoop's implementation.
And the beauty is Hadoop can even change over time. You just have a high-level abstraction, and it can be whatever under the hood, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, pluggability, dependency injection, all that kind of stuff has been a really big key tenet of our development from the beginning.
Really, dependency injection? No. So the reason I'm joking about this is because if you follow the conversation, this is one of the things I keep saying. Like, we would be light years ahead if Hadoop would have dependency injection, right? But instead, everything is hard coupled, right? So if you want to have an own communication protocol because you might work somewhere where it needs to be encrypted, good luck with that. It's all it's all just hard coded. I mean, you have classes in Hadoop where you have like an initiate method long like this, and you're just like, excuse me, what you doing there? Oh, you're opening a port. Well, good letting me know. So
yes, Hadoop does not have dependency injection in any way, and it's a huge part of the problem. I agree. It's one of the big things that I'd really like to see in HBase for 2014 is more pluggability.
Dependency. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey,
we should open a club. Yeah, or we do a Facebook petition or something.
There you go.
Yeah.
Make Hadoop pluggable?
No, like version of control everywhere. So,
but that's actually kind of been one of the ideas of our platform, and the reason that we decided to take, I think, a more bold step of saying, here's a new programming framework, here's a new set of abstractions, is exactly that. Those abstractions are totally disconnected from the implementation, right? Yeah. And so one of the benefits is you run our platform in memory. For your unit test, you can run it on level DB on your local node. You can run it on a SQL database, or you can run it in HBase. Yeah, right.
Doesn't matter.
Your app stays the same. You plug it all in.
Very nice.
Guess what? We could probably support Cassandra tomorrow. Yeah. And with part of what we did with Weave. So Weave is our little Yarn framework, right? Yeah. And everything we build on Weave. So Weave now, I actually just learned today. So we've built Weave to now translate to multiple versions of Hadoop.
Nice.
Because the Yarn API has changed in non-backwards compatible ways.
Of course.
And so one of our customers runs that old version, and another one runs the brand new one. We have to support both. And so Weave has given us the opportunity to never mess with any of our code, never mess with Yarn itself, and we can have this disintermediated layer. Yeah. It makes it much simpler. In the future, we might put Weave on Mesos.
Yeah. So what open source technology in our community excites you besides Weave?
Besides Weave and Yarn and HBase, obviously. Yeah.
So, is there something where you're like, oh, that's getting really interesting? Where you're like, oh, here's another kick on this.
It's been...
That's okay, you can say Weave.
It's been a lot of SQL databases.
Yeah.
A lot of SQL stuff out there, which is interesting.
Okay.
I don't know. What's a good open source thing I've been seeing recently? I mean, I'm excited by the prospects of these these SQL systems.
Okay.
I think
SQL systems. Are you serious?
Yeah.
I think the show just ended. I don't like SQL, man.
How do you plug into the rest of the existing enterprise world?
Giving them a spreadsheet, of course.
That's
how
one
the business
angle.
user, huh?
That's one angle, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that speak SQL, and actually, it's not even just the people. Actually, it's the tools.
So here's my theory about this, right? It's a great thing. So SQL was invented in 1967, actually down the road here, right? Basically, 50 miles down the road. And just because we're uncomfortable to get to a new standard, we still have to break everything down to that kind of 60s or 70 model. But I really believe that the software developers that are in their 20s and early 30s today, Ruby on Rails guys, blah, 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 they don't even think about SQL anymore. They have active objects, they have Hibernate, they have now, what you guys doing and so on. They think in a different world. And I think in 5 years, they are like, divisional CTOs or decision makers. In 10 years, they are maybe CIOs. So I think in 10 years from now, nobody will talk about SQL anymore. I mean, we tried with object databases, but it was like...
Trust me, nobody hates SQL more than me, right? I've been trying to get rid of SQL for a long, long time.
I'm good. I'm glad.
Adopting SQL was the last thing I ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
But it's, as you get into the enterprise thing, it's just a reality of... It's a reality of the existing tools.
Come on, stand up against.
That are being used. Yeah. Right, but guess, if I have a customer and I do a deployment in there and they're like, yeah, we just need you to tie into this one BI tool.
Yeah.
And the only connection to that BI tool is SQL.
Well, then you just have them use data mirror.
Load your stuff into a spreadsheet and all is good.
Yeah. How do we integrate this? We should talk about it.
Can't they do something better than the spreadsheet, man? What year was that invented?
It's younger than SQL. I can tell you that. Yeah, it is, of course.
Not that much. 70s?
Late 70s, early 80s. Come on. Yeah. It's only 30 years, not 60.
Okay.
So let me ask you a different question. And you still owe us a fun story from kind of the history days. What's the biggest challenge in building your company from kind of a technology, building your engineering team kind of thing? What is it, what really... what's really hard to overcome? You guys are growing pretty quickly. So what's the challenge around that? Finding good people, getting them on the same platform, making them all write code in the same way. What is it?
Finding the right people is definitely, I'm sure you would share that. Recruiting is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we found difficult is you're always underwater in a startup, especially in the first few years, right? There's always much more you should be doing than you're able to do.
Yeah.
And so the appeal of hiring people who are hireable is big.
Yeah, but then you pay for it.
And you pay for it.
Yeah.
I think that's always one of the challenges is you have to be very, very, and also with getting rid of people, and you have to be very, very forward-facing and upfront and just, as a CEO, I think it's a huge part of my job is the talent side of it.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. It's your job.
Yeah.
That is the job.
It is. And I think, we've learned some things, and definitely one thing we've learned is you cannot lower the bar.
Yeah.
You'll pay for it in many, many more ways than you think you're going to get an advantage out of it.
Yeah.
And keeping the bar high, figuring out, I think managing personalities. Sometimes when you get a lot of really, really smart people, people have different personalities, and you have to learn how to work with all these people. And, we've been fortunate that a culture pretty much grew with the company, a culture of which is just paid dividends, right?
Yeah.
I think the thing that we've done is if you can create that tight group and you can create a really good core set, then when people interview, they kind of self-select.
Right.
First of all, our interviews are pretty aggressive. If you can't stand the interview, then you don't belong in the company, right?
Yeah. Do they have to drink shots or something in the interview?
Funny you should ask that, actually. Yeah? We gave,
you take them out?
Tequila is a big thing in our office.
Okay.
We have a keg, too.
Okay, kids, switch off the TV now.
Yes, yeah.
You have a keg of tequila?
No, we have a keg of beer.
I'm glad. All right.
And then we have many bottles of tequila.
But tequila is not just your company. I mean, that's your DNA. Tequila. I mean.
Well, I have to impart my DNA on the company.
Right. Yeah.
So yes, tequila is in my DNA. You know, I had a tequila shot bar at my wedding that you attended, and you hopefully partook quite frequently. And I partook a little bit too much at my own wedding.
That was a great. Anyhow, move on.
So, you know, we have a tradition of tequila shots.
Okay.
And pretty much any excuse we can find.
Okay.
And so we have had a couple situations.
Every buck you find, you have to take a tequila shot.
When we got our first paid customer, the first check ever in the company,
tequila.
We were interviewing somebody at that time.
Oh, okay. Well, and he's like,
they came out.
I would love to work in that company.
They came out. He came out. He took a tequila shot with all of us, everybody, and we hired him. Yeah. And he's just like always remembers that moment. He's like, obviously the only time he's ever taken a tequila shot in an interview. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder how many people have had tequila shots in interviews.
Leave comments in the section if
you've ever had a shot of alcohol while at an interview.
In the interview.
Yeah. But that's part of our
keeping the vibe.
Part of our vibe and part of our culture. And if you're really uncomfortable taking a tequila shot in the middle of your interview. Yeah.
So it's a real startup environment.
It's a real startup environment. And I learned, and I think it's just don't hold back, right? Because people need to know who you are when they're interviewing and all that kind of stuff.
So to maybe round this all up, what is it what you would recommend to folks that really want to build big data in their organization, beyond using your product that they have to do, that's obvious, but what are the things that people should really pay attention to as they build big data out in their organization?
That's a great question. I think the biggest shift I've seen in Hadoop in the past year is the conversation is finally changing to use cases. Yeah. I think so much of the early stuff when Cloudera was the only company around for a while and it was really science projects and what I call putting all your bits in one bucket. That was the win. Yeah. Right? The win in Hadoop 3 years ago was, can we break down the silos and get all the bits in one bucket? Yeah. The problem with that is...
dumping.
What's the problem with that? Yeah. You don't get anything out of that, right? All you've done is solve the technical feasibility problem, and you haven't actually gotten value out of it. Yeah. And so the conversation is totally switched now, and I think, and it's really, how are we going to derive business value? Mm-hmm. What's the use case? Yeah. Right? And, it's one of our tenets. It's like the big data ecosystem and selling here, it's a POC game. Yeah. I'm sure you guys do tons of POCs. Maybe you're moving past that now, but, that's a lot of about how it works early. Mm. And... what we really focus on is no science projects. That's our rule. We don't do science projects, right?
That's really
Let's
smart.
come up with a use case that has a path to production, something that is meaningful to your business, something that you'll actually use, something that's definable. Not some like, hey, if we somehow got a 360-degree customer view, we could optimize. Yeah. That's not specific enough, right? Like, what are your data sources? What are you actually trying to run on there? And how do we reach an actual definable outcome, right? So that switch towards the business value, the use case, what you're actually trying to derive out of the platform, rather than the platform is value in and of itself, right? Which it's not, right? It's just another piece of infrastructure, right?
It's beyond the gadget. It's about real value.
Yeah, I think that's been a big shift. That's what I'm excited to see in the market. And we play very well into that because we're much more focused on the application side than the data warehouse.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks for the beer. And cheers.
Good to see you as always.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
And let's go and have some shots.
Let's do it.